James Stephens, in Theme, wrote, "The golden eve is all astir, and tides of sunset flood on us. Incredible, miraculous. We look with adoration on beauty coming, beauty gone, that waits not any looking on." Hello once again, I'm Don Jackson with the heartbeat of the internet. The first day of summer is ephemeral. We anticipate its arrival throughout the harsh winter. School children count the days to the last bell and their summer vacation. But no sooner does it arrive than the hours of daylight begin to shorten. That's part of the reason for the celebrating that takes place at midsummer. We'll celebrate a little of the magic and welcome the most gentle season of the year. Slenderly, languidly, their hands set lightly on their hips, the two young women preceded us out onto a rosy-colored porch, open toward the sunset, where 4 candles flickered on the table in the diminished wind. "Why candles?" objected Daisy, frowning. She snapped them out with her fingers. "In 2 weeks, it'll be the longest day of the year." She looked at us all radiantly. "Do you always watch for the longest day of the year and then miss it?" "I always watch for the longest day in the year and then miss it." "We ought to plan something," yawned Miss Baker, sitting down at the table as if she were getting into bed. "All right," said Daisy. "What'll we plan?" She turned to me helplessly. "What do people plan?" Of course, the person Daisy Buchanan is asking this question of is her cousin Nick Carraway, the narrator in F. Scott Fitzgerald's classic novel about the excesses of the Roaring Twenties and obsessive love, The Great Gatsby. Of course, the film was remade and released with Leonardo DiCaprio in the starring role. The jury's out, but for my money, it has to be Robert Redford and Mia Farrow. Just saying. The narrator says, "For a while I lost sight of Jordan Baker, and then in midsummer, I found her again." So what do people do at midsummer, the longest day in the year? Well, some hold parties to celebrate the extended daylight, because after the first day of summer, the days begin to grow shorter. It is hardly noticeable at first, but as summer continues, the shadows will betray the subtle change in the seasons. One way that people do celebrate is with fire. Now, you would think that fire is more appropriate for the fall and winter, but summer is the best time for campfire stories after dark, and of course barbecues. For some reason, the food just tastes better when it's eaten outdoors. It might be something fundamental to our origins, when all meals were consumed in the great outdoors, a time when we as a species needed to be careful that we weren't slated to be the main course on something's menu. William Shakespeare in Twelfth Night said, "This is very midsummer madness." And I agree, for this is midsummer. Sarah Teasdale wrote, "The crescent moon is large enough to linger a little while after the twilight goes." This moist midsummer night, the garden perfumes are earth and apple, dewy pine and rose. Over my head, 4 new-cut stars are glinting, and the inevitable night draws on. I am alone. The old terror takes me. Evenings will come like this when I am gone. Evenings on evenings, years on years, forever. Be taught my spirit. Close upon and keep the scent, the brooding chill, the gliding firefly. A poem learned before I fall asleep. Have you ever noticed that there is no smell quite like that of a crowd of fireflies on a lawn late at night? It's a smell that is unique to summer. The word solstice actually derives from the Latin meaning sun stand still. any idea where you would have to travel in order to ensure you basked in the longest period of daylight on the first day of summer? You would have to go north, my friend, all the way to the North Pole. James Russell Lowell wrote, "And what is so rare as a day in June? Then, if ever, come perfect days. Then heaven tries the earth if it be in tune, and over it softly her warm ear lays." Alice Adams in Summer, Clothes, and Love wrote, "Everything that I had wanted had come to pass. A hot southern summer, and time at a southern beach, and a summer love." That quote was featured in an article about summer love by Craig Wilson in USA Today some years back. He called it a love that's short and oh, so sweet. End quote. For isn't that the nature of a summer love? To burn itself out quickly, but while you're waiting for the flame to go out, it's a very intense flare-up. Henry James said, "Summer afternoon, summer afternoon." To me, those have always been the two most beautiful words in the English language. Not really, though. There are two others that are even more beautiful, as far as I'm concerned. Summer romance. Sound loves to revel in a summer night. Edgar Allan Poe. There was dancing now on the canvas in the garden. Superior couples holding each other tortuously, fashionably, and keeping in the corners. And a great number of single girls dancing individualistically, or relieving the orchestra for a moment of the burden of the banjo or the traps. By midnight, the hilarity had increased. A celebrated tenor had sung in Italian, and a notorious contralto had sung in jazz, and between the numbers people were doing stunts all over the garden, while happy, vacuous bursts of laughter rose toward the summer sky. The caterwauling horns had reached a crescendo, and I turned away and cut across the lawn toward home. I glanced back once. A wafer of a moon was shining over Gatsby's house, making the night fine as before and surviving the laughter and the sound of his still glowing garden. A sudden emptiness seemed to flow now from the windows and the great doors, endowing with complete isolation the figure of the host, who stood on the porch, his hand up in a formal gesture of farewell. Another excerpt from the Old Sports Telling of the Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. It is a beautiful summer night. The tall houses leave their balcony shutters open to the wide plaza of the old village. In the large, deserted square, stone benches, burning bush, and acacias trace their black shadows symmetrically on the white sand. In its zenith, the moon. In the tower, the clock's illuminated globe. I walk through this ancient village alone, like a ghost. Summer Night by Antonio Machado E. Ruiz, translated by Willis Barnstone. We are making our way through this webcast to a place just like that, for that's where we will eventually end up. Henry James wrote, "The flood of summer light had begun to ebb, the air had grown mellow, the shadows were long upon the smooth, dense turf." But that's somewhere down the road. The shadows are not quite ready to deceive us yet. But there are always subtle reminders about summer's betrayal. Emily Dickinson wrote, "Sweet is the swamp with its secrets, until we meet a snake. 'Tis then we sigh for houses, and our departure take at that enthralling gallop that only childhood knows. A snake is summer's treason, and guile is where it goes." Raymond Carver, in Hummingbird for Tess, wrote, "Suppose I say summer, write the word hummingbird, put it in an envelope, take it down the hill to the box. When you open my letter, you will recall those days and how much, just how much, I love you." A lot of the magic associated with midsummer comes from the legends of the past. The Fays of France and the White Elves of Scandinavia. It was they who, dancing, made fairy rings, circles of brightest green, or of toadstools. Only by stepping within the circle could you see the dancers, and then, though it would seem but a moment, you must dance with them all night, or a year and a day. Such fairies lived in the woods and fields under green mounds or little hills, but rarely could a mortal find his way there, except on one of the 4 magical nights of the year: May Eve, Christmas Eve, Halloween, Midsummer Eve. Milton wrote, "And pomp and feast and revelry, with mask and antique pageantry, such sights as youthful poets dream on summer eves by haunted stream." When midsummer arrives, the heat and humidity, the nighttime fragrance of flowers and rustling sounds can lull us into an almost dreamlike state. Shakespeare's work Midsummer Night's Dream suggests that magic is afoot at this time of year. If summer dreamed, these then may be what the dreaming season imagines. James Kavanaugh, author of Sunshine Days and Foggy Nights, wrote, "I was born to catch dragons in their dens and pick flowers, to tell tales and laugh away the morning, to drift and dream like a lazy stream and walk barefoot across sunshine days." The New Scientist reported some time back that they may have proof that whales dream. Does that surprise you? It is egotistical to believe that we are the only living things to dream. John Keats believed that something even more ancient than whales might be able to dream in the night. As when upon a tranced summer night, those green-robed senators of mighty woods, tall oaks, branch-charmed by the earnest stars, dream, and so dream all night without a stir. After reading about the Ents in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings trilogy, one can almost believe such a thing as trees that dream. Henry Ward Beecher wrote, "Young love is a flame, very pretty, often very hot and fierce, but still only light and flickering. The love of the older and disciplined heart is as coals, deep burning, unquenchable." Do you know what the night before the summer solstice is called? St. John's Eve, or Midsummer's Eve. I would love to attend a Midsummer Night's party like this one, recounted in the book It Was on Fire When I Lay Down on It by Robert Fulghum. And I quote, "Once on a Midsummer's Eve, in a farming village in the south of France, my wife and I were taken to a celebration of the feast of St. John. Which St. John I do not know. There are many. If he provided a reason to celebrate with music and with dance, then good for him, whoever he was." When the first star could be seen in the night sky, the villagers lit a bonfire in the dirty playfield of the school, and a folk band began to play guitar, bass drum, shepherd's flute, and concertina, music that was close at hand and long ago at the same time. In a universal two-step, couples danced, encircling the great fire, their only light. Lovely. A scene from a novel, a film, a hopeful imagination. At the first intermission, the couples did not leave for refreshment, but stood staring into the bonfire. Suddenly, an athletic young man and woman, holding each other tightly by the hand, ran and leaped high in the air through the fierce flames, landing safely just beyond the edge of the coals. As the crowd applauded, the two embraced and walked away, wearing expressions of fearful joy, having tempted the fates and emerged unscathed to dance once more. Make no mistake about it, what they had done was quite dangerous, and it was this leaping through the fire that was at the heart of the feast of St. John. It worked this way. If you were lovers, married or not, or even if you were just friends and wanted to seal your covenant, you made a wish together that you would never part, and then rushed the fire and jumped over while holding hands. It was said that the hotter the fire and the higher the flames, the longer and closer would be the companionship. But it was also said that if you misjudged the fire and got singed, or came down in the coals on the other side, or lost your grip on one another while jumping, then evil would come to you and your bond. Not to be taken lightly, this. So the young of heart and fleet of foot jumped early on. As the evening grew darker and the fire burned lower, the more cautious made their moves. Some did not clear the fire, some jumped too late, and some ran to the fire only to stop short, and some broke their grip, with one partner jumping while the other held back at the last moment. Though there was much laughter and cheering and teasing, it was also very clear that this was ancient and very serious business, not just another party. Once a year, late in the night of high summer, with music and dance to lift the spirit, you took your love by the hand and tempted the fire of destiny. At evening's end, when only glowing coals remained, a traditional tune signaling a last dance was played. As the final note of the shepherd's flute faded, the villagers encircled the soft glow of the embers and fell silent. The village couple married longest caught hands and gracefully, solemnly stepped together over what once was fire. At that signal of benediction, the villagers embraced and walked off into the starry, starry night toward home and all the fires of love ever after. The words of Robert Fulgham. Good night, sweet dreams. I'm Don Jackson.